While we would all love free college tuition, you should not bank on this for your student. In fact, the average cost of college for a student in the United States is almost $36,000, and that is per student per school year. And this cost has tripled in 20 years with an annual growth rate of nearly 7%. So it is far outpacing any kind of other inflation. Now, why is it increasing so rapidly? I'm going to share that with you in just a moment, but I also want to give you 5 specific strategies to help you and your student find an affordable college so that you can avoid paying these exorbitant amounts for a higher education. Now click the subscribe button because every single week we will be releasing a new strategy to help you reduce that cost of college. Hello, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, where we redefine paying for college for our families so that they can have a strong financial future rather than one where their students are buried in student loan debt. We do this primarily through scholarships, but there are so many other strategies, and one of them includes finding the right financial fit for a university. So why are the costs increasing so much? Well, there's many reasons and many theories, but one of the first things that we'll notice are just more amenities, less state funding through the government and federal government funding, and then also simply the fact that there is money to borrow. So right now, students, if they say that they want to borrow $120,000 at 18 years old, they can get the money as long as you are willing to co-sign. And so really colleges have no incentive to limit their costs when they know that truly in the end, students can usually get the funds from somewhere. So personally, I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. But the good news is we are going to help you with a few strategies. Now, looking at these costs, this would mean that a family needs to save 6 figures for an education these days, and that is per child. So if you have multiple children, you could basically be buying a house in cash if you were to save all the money you would need to pay for a degree. According to educationdata.org, a public 4-year in-state university costs around $100,000, where out of state, you're looking at $175,000 for 4 years. Now, this is not including private institutions, and their costs were even higher than this. I'll include a link to the stats down in the description. Now, before I turn to how to reduce the cost, I do want to give you a rough calculation based on those numbers. If we were to borrow them, then you can roughly say about 10% of the amount borrowed is what your student would have to pay in a monthly bill for their student loan payments. So for example, if your student was to borrow $40,000 towards an education, then their monthly payments would be just over about $400 per month. Now this is assuming a 4 to 6% interest rate. If your student was to borrow $100,000, which was on the low end of the range that I just shared with you, they would be looking at over $1,000 a month in student loan payments. Now, I don't know about you, but in my opinion, most starting salaries cannot afford to cover the cost of living and that student loan bill on top of it. So comment below, did you know this rough calculation? Did you ever look at what your student would be paying after borrowing the money to see what kind of consequences they would be dealing with, or if they could even afford it based on their salary? Let me know in the comments, and if you did look this up or if you just did the calculation, were you surprised by it, or was it about what you were expecting? So comment below, what do you think about those monthly payments, and are they around what you had in mind for your student? Now, these numbers are scary. I know that. This is why we do what we do, helping families work towards a debt-free degree. So now I want to turn into how can we find an affordable college? How can we bring down the amount that we even have to find money to cover in the first place? I have 5 quick tips for you and your student. First and foremost is looking in state. Now, I know this is a common one, but the reason I'm suggesting this is not only because your student typically receives in-state tuition, which is lower, but also because a lot of times states have their own state scholarships that your student just wouldn't be able to use if they go out of state. Now, some states have reciprocity agreements where if a major is not offered within your own state, you can get in-state tuition at a certain school out of state if they're in that partnership. Or some states just simply have swaps where they'll take each other's students and give in-state tuition. So you should look into reciprocity agreements for your state schools. However, first and foremost, you do want to consider those state schools, especially if you're in a state that has fantastic scholarship opportunities. I'm going to include a link to a blog post we have listing out the different states and their perks based on where your student is considering going to school. So you can check that out after this video in the link in the description. Also, you don't want to rule out private schools because depending on your student's situation, your family's financial situation, sometimes private institutions actually can be more affordable than an in-state school because they have a lot of private funding from alumni. They have a lot more personal grants, private grants that they can possibly offer your student. So don't necessarily just rule out private universities, but again, we always want to consider our public ones in-state so that we can get that in-state scholarship as well. Now, the second way to find an affordable college could be a community bridge school program. What I mean by this is where your student can do their first 1 or 2 years at a local community college that has a arranged agreement with a Big Four university that your student wants to go to, a Big 4-year school. So this agreement is critical because it means that your student is guaranteed to carry the credits over to the new university. If they were to just go to a community college on their own and then transfer, that can still be a ton of money in savings. So I'm not saying don't do that, but if you can find one that has the agreement, then when they transfer, you know that their first 2 years will transfer 1 for 1. They won't lose any credits that they took. So again, this is called a community college bridge program, and there's plenty of them, especially with main state universities within your state. So if you can partner this with the other tip that I gave, then you could possibly do a local school, get the in-state scholarship, and then transfer to the Big Four school after the first 2 years and just save a ton of money. Now, my third tip here is to look at schools that have 100% need met criteria. We have one family that did this, and actually Duke is a university that says that they will cover 100% of the need that your student has. Need is calculated by the cost of attendance, so the total cost, including tuition, books, fees, room and board, etc., minus your family's EFC, your expected family contribution, which is a number that you get by submitting FAFSA. So that gap is your student's financial need. And some schools say that they guarantee that they will meet that need. They will find a way to cover it with their offer. So one of our families, by giving them this strategy, they actually found that Duke was within reason for their budget. They could cover the EFC, and then the need was fully covered by Duke. And so their student actually just finished her 2nd year at Duke and is completely debt-free so far. They never thought that Duke would be an option for them, and yet here she is, not only going to an amazing school, but doing so debt-free by pursuing this strategy. Now, if you go to collegedata.com, you can actually filter for schools that have high percentage meeting criteria. So if you go in there, they have a sliding scale. You can put it all the way up to 100 and see what schools give 100% of that gap coverage, or you can even bring it down a little bit, 75%, 50%, whatever it is that you think your family could get by with paying. So that's, again, collegedata.com that you can do that. Now, my fourth tip is to find where your student will be competitive. So this means that your student can increase their chances of receiving merit aid from the university. So not need-based, but skill-based, based on their statistics, maybe their GPA or their ACT or SAT scores. The way to do this is ideally to be in the top 25th percentile of the school's stats. You want to be above average for them so that your student is tipping the scale to increasing their statistics. For example, say their average SAT score is a 1250 and your student has a 1450. Chances are they probably can get some merit money because they are above their average pool of candidates for entering that university. Now, a quick way to see this is also just to go to the university's website and use their college cost calculator, their net price calculators that they have on their website. If they're asking for GPA and test scores, they're most likely considering whether or not your student would be eligible for that merit money as well whenever they give you that final number. Now, my fifth and final tip is if your student is competitive, you may be able to negotiate for a better offer if they receive a better one from a different school. We've had a student do this where they received a dance scholarship from one school and it was greater than the other school. And so they went back to the other school and they showed them this and said, is there any way you could meet this? And believe it or not, the department was able to do so. So they increased their offer in order to get this student to go to their school. So again, you have to make sure that you have ground to stand on. You have to make sure that your student has an offer that is already better or some sort of criteria that they can show to them that they deserve more money. But this can be a major opportunity for a lot of families. Now, even if your student is not necessarily competitive, you might be able to appeal the financial results based on need. So if your family's financial situation has changed, then that could be an option as well. So if you want a video on how to appeal, do me a favor and comment below, say appeal video please, and I will put that on the list of videos that I should release soon. Now I have to say with these appeals, we've had tons of families pull off this strategy and result in thousands of dollars more per year for their family. Just by going back to the school, bringing them proof and documentation that we coach them through, and submitting that appeal for more money, they are able to save thousands of dollars. So definitely do not rule this out. Okay, so those are 5 tactics on how you can find an affordable college or make a college more affordable for your student and yourself. Now, again, you do have many opportunities beyond just choosing the school. So college choice is one major choice that can affect the bill, but you also have primarily outside scholarships to help pay for whatever that bill ends up being. So in fact, I did this and I received 6 figures in scholarships, including an overage check every single semester. Now, if you want to learn how I did that and learn where to find these outside scholarships that can be used, you can click on the free training button. It should be somewhere on the screen, as well as find the link in the description. So that free training will show you all about these scholarships, where to find them, how to avoid scams, so that your student can get to where they don't even have to borrow money in order to pay for that degree. Now, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you can see next week's video so that you get another strategy that will help you work towards paying for college without student loan debt. I'll see you in the next video.